Hey everyone. Today we're tackling a question most people won't touch. Inside the forbidden bedrooms of ancient Rome, where power was measured by pleasure. Forget the sanitized version. The truth is stranger and more revealing. Imagine walking through the marble-lined corridors of Imperial Rome, where behind closed doors, the currency of influence was often measured in intimate access. Now let's get into it. This section discusses historical allegations about private life in antiquity. No graphic detail. Focus on political implications and source bias. When we think of Roman power, we usually picture legions conquering foreign lands, marble-clad forums with toga-wearing senators, or grand architectural feats spanning valleys and rivers. But there was another arena of power entirely, one that played out in the private spaces of Roman homes, particularly in the bedrooms of the elite. Here, access, intimacy, and pleasure became political currencies that could purchase influence, secure alliances, or destroy enemies more effectively than any battlefield victory. The bedroom in Rome wasn't just a place for rest. It was a complex political institution. The Romans even had a specific term for it: cubiculum. Unlike our modern bedrooms, the Roman cubiculum wasn't strictly private. It was a semi-public space where the elite would receive select visitors, conduct business, and display their status. The degree of access to one's cubiculum was a direct reflection of power and trust. Being invited into the inner sanctum of a powerful Roman's home signaled a relationship that transcended ordinary political connections. What's fascinating is how the Romans themselves documented and obsessed over these bedroom politics. When Cicero wanted to destroy Mark Antony's reputation, he didn't focus primarily on his military failures. He attacked his bedroom behavior. When imperial biographers wanted to undermine an emperor's legitimacy, they often began with salacious tales of what allegedly happened behind closed doors. The Romans understood something fundamental about power that we often overlook. Public authority is frequently built on private foundations. The ability to control one's domestic space, who enters, who stays, what happens there, was seen as a prerequisite for controlling the state. A man who couldn't manage his household was considered unfit to manage Rome. But here's where it gets really interesting. Roman society operated on a complicated set of sexual and social codes that bear little resemblance to our own. For them, the crucial distinction wasn't between homosexuality and heterosexuality, concepts that didn't exist in their cultural framework, but between activity and passivity. Being the active partner in any sexual encounter preserved one's masculinity and status. Being passive, particularly for a freeborn male citizen, could destroy a political career. And wait. Before you start thinking those Romans were so much more liberated than we are, I need to stop you right there. The Roman bedroom was actually a site of extreme inequality. Their sexual ethics weren't freer. They were just organized along different power axes, ones that reinforced hierarchies of gender, status, and citizenship at every turn. What happened in Roman bedrooms was considered so crucial to the state that Augustus, Rome's first emperor, actually implemented legislation regulating marriage, reproduction, and adultery. Think about that. The most powerful man in the known world believed that managing what happened in private bedrooms was essential to maintaining imperial stability. That's how central these spaces were to Roman conceptions of power. So as we dive deeper into this exploration, remember this. When ancient sources discuss the bedroom behaviors of the powerful, they're rarely just gossiping. They're engaging in political discourse, using the intimate as a lens through which to judge the public. And that makes these forbidden bedrooms not just scandalous sideshows to real history, but central stages where the drama of Roman power played out in ways that would shape an empire. What's up, everyone? If you want the unfiltered cut of history, you're in the right place. Now that we've established why bedrooms mattered in Roman politics, let's zoom in on our first major player, Julius Caesar, the man whose bedroom conquests became almost as legendary as his military ones. And yeah, I know what you're thinking, but trust me. This isn't about salacious details. This is about how bedroom politics helped create an empire. Ancient biographers writing decades later, often with political grudges, report that Caesar was, in their words, every woman's man and every man's woman. That line isn't just ancient slander. It's a fascinating window into how Romans viewed power and sexuality. By claiming Caesar played both active and passive roles, His enemies were questioning his very right to rule. Remember what I said in Block 1? Passivity was political death for a Roman man. So when Curio the Elder called Caesar the Queen of Bithynia for his alleged relationship with King Nicomedes, it wasn't just mockery. It was an attempt at political assassination. What's particularly fascinating about Caesar is how he navigated these attacks. When his soldiers sang ribald songs about his affair with Nicomedes during his Gallic triumph, Caesar didn't have them punished, a move that would have validated the importance of the rumors. Instead, he shrugged it off, refusing to let his enemies define him through bedroom talk. Yet at the same time, he carefully cultivated his own sexual reputation with Roman noblewomen, particularly with his famous affair with Servilia, the mother of Brutus. The relationship between Caesar and Servilia demonstrates exactly how bedroom politics worked in Rome. Caesar didn't just give Servilia his attention, he gave her a pearl worth 6 million sesterces, roughly $3 million in today's money, after his conquest of Gaul. When you realize that was happening while he was also having an affair with Cleopatra, another relationship that was fundamentally political, you start to see how Caesar used his bedroom as an extension of his public policy. But let's not make the mistake of thinking this was just about one remarkable man. The entire Roman elite engaged in this system where marriages, divorces, and affairs were political moves on the great game board of power. Cato the Younger, that supposedly incorruptible defender of republican virtue, divorced his wife Marcia so that his ally Hortensius could marry her and form a stronger bond with Cato's family. After Hortensius died, Cato remarried her. Imagine treating marriage like a political loan. That was Roman bedroom politics at work. Here's where it gets even more complex. Women were not simply passive pieces in this game. Despite their legal limitations, women like Servilia, Fulvia, and later Livia Drusilla wielded enormous informal power through their management of these intimate networks. When Caesar's enemies wanted to reach him, they often went through Servilia. When Mark Antony needed political allies, his wife Fulvia was often the architect of those connections. The bedroom was one of the few spaces where Roman women could exercise direct influence over men who controlled the formal levers of power, and some women became masterful at converting bedroom access into political capital. Bedroom diplomacy wasn't just between elite men and their wives. It extended to relationships with freed slaves, client kings, and foreign rulers, all of whom understood that sometimes the fastest route to power ran through the cubiculum. One particularly telling example. When Caesar began his relationship with Cleopatra, he wasn't just indulging a passion, he was creating a political alignment that would give him access to Egyptian grain, wealth, and a strategic position in the eastern Mediterranean. Cleopatra, for her part, was securing Roman support for her own precarious position on the Egyptian throne. Their famous liaison produced a son, Caesarion, who represented the physical embodiment of this political alliance. This is the key insight about Roman bedrooms. They weren't separate from politics. They were politics by other means. The public and private spheres that we try so hard to distinguish today were, for Romans, simply different theaters where the same power plays unfolded. A victory in the bedroom could translate directly to advantage in the Senate, and a failure in intimate politics could undermine even the most accomplished public career. As we move forward in our story, remember that when Roman sources discuss who slept with whom, they aren't just recording ancient gossip. They're documenting a sophisticated political system that operated parallel to, and often influenced, the more familiar politics of forum and battlefield. Caesar mastered both, and that mastery helped transform a republic into what would soon become the greatest empire the Western world had ever seen. Hey guys, everything you think you know about this story? Keep it. Then watch it fall apart. The bedroom politics we've been exploring didn't end with Caesar's assassination. They intensified as Rome transformed from republic to empire, and no one understood this better than Rome's first emperor, Augustus, formerly known as Octavian. Augustus didn't just participate in bedroom politics, he weaponized and institutionalized them. This section discusses historical allegations about private life in antiquity, no graphic detail, focus on political implications and source bias. Let's start with a seemingly contradictory fact. The man who would implement Rome's strictest morality legislation had himself risen to power partly through bedroom connections. As Caesar's adopted son, young Octavian faced rumors, preserved by hostile sources like Suetonius, that he had secured his position through providing personal favors to his great-uncle. Mark Antony explicitly accused him of this, and Octavian never really escaped the shadow of these early allegations. Perhaps that's why, once he consolidated power after defeating Antony and Cleopatra, Augustus became obsessed with regulating Roman sexual behavior. In 18 BCE, he introduced the Julian laws, Leges Juliae, which criminalized adultery, incentivized marriage and childbearing among the elite, and penalized celibacy. Think about that. The emperor was literally legislating what could happen in the bedrooms of Roman citizens. But here's the twist that most people miss. These laws weren't primarily about morality as we understand it. They were about power and control. By regulating sexual behavior, Augustus was attempting to stabilize the elite families whose support he needed, ensuring clear lines of inheritance and succession. He was also asserting his authority to govern even the most intimate aspects of Roman life. The bedroom had become a matter of state policy. The laws applied most strictly to the senatorial and equestrian classes, the very people who might challenge imperial power. For a senatorial woman caught in adultery, the penalties were severe: exile to an island, loss of half her dowry and a third of her property, and prohibition from remarrying a free-born Roman citizen. Her lover faced similar penalties. Meanwhile, if a husband discovered his wife in the act of adultery and killed her lover, he could potentially escape punishment, a startling codification of honor-killing in Roman law. But Augustus didn't just legislate, he led by example, or at least he tried to present that image. His marriage to Livia Drusilla became the template for the new Roman family he envisioned. Their household was portrayed as modest, with Livia supposedly weaving Augustus's clothing herself, a claim that archaeologists find highly dubious given the complexity and cost of imperial garments. The imperial bedroom was presented as a model of restraint and proper Roman values. The reality, of course, was messier. While publicly promoting family values, Augustus was privately navigating complex sexual politics. He divorced his first wife Scribonia the very day she gave birth to his daughter Julia, in order to marry the already pregnant Livia, whom he allegedly had snatched from her husband Tiberius Claudius Nero. Not exactly the family values poster child he pretended to be. Even more revealing is how Augustus handled succession planning through bedroom politics. Having no son of his own, Augustus married his daughter Julia first to his nephew Marcellus, then after Marcellus's death to his close friend Agrippa, and finally to his stepson Tiberius. These weren't love matches. They were dynastic arrangements designed to produce male heirs with connections to the Julian line. Julia's body and bedroom became instruments of imperial policy. The tragedy of Julia reveals the harsh realities of Augustus's bedroom politics. After bearing 5 children for the sake of the dynasty, Julia began engaging in affairs with Roman noblemen. Were these simply personal choices, or covert political networking with men who might have had designs on power? We'll never know for certain, but Augustus's reaction was severe. He exiled his only daughter to a tiny island where she was forbidden wine and male visitors, effectively imprisoning her until her death. Here we see the double standard at the heart of imperial bedroom politics. While male emperors could engage in various relationships with relative impunity, as long as they maintained the appearance of traditional masculinity, women of the imperial household were expected to embody perfect chastity and fidelity. Their bodies weren't their own. They belonged to the dynasty. Augustus's regulation of Roman bedrooms set a precedent that would continue throughout the imperial period. Emperors would be judged not just by their military victories or building projects, but by how they managed their own intimate lives and how they regulated those of the elite. The bedroom had become a crucial arena for displaying and exercising imperial power, and subsequent rulers would be measured against the Augustan standard, however hypocritical it may have been. As we'll see in the next block, some of Augustus's successors would embrace this connection between bedroom and power in ways that would shock even the Romans, pushing the boundaries of what was acceptable even in a society with very different sexual norms from our own. What's up, everyone? If you want the unfiltered cut of history, you're in the right place. Now, let's unravel perhaps the most notorious bedroom politician of them all, Caligula, whose short reign would push Roman bedroom politics to terrifying new extremes. Let me preface this by emphasizing that what we know about Caligula comes primarily from 3 hostile sources: Suetonius, Cassius Dio, and Philo of Alexandria. All were writing decades after his death and had political reasons to portray him in the worst possible light. What's indisputable is that Caligula represented a dramatic break from the Augustan model of at least pretending to bedroom propriety. Caligula came to power in 37 CE, the beloved son of the popular general Germanicus, and the only direct male descendant of Augustus still alive, through his grandmother Julia the Younger. Initially welcomed by a populace tired of Tiberius's reclusive final years, Caligula quickly established a new imperial style that flaunted power rather than disguising it behind republican facades. This new style extended directly to bedroom politics. Where Augustus had legislated sexual morality, Caligula allegedly flouted every norm. According to Suetonius, he seduced the wives of dinner guests, then commented on their performance when returning to the table. He allegedly had relationships with the wives of high-ranking officials, reconfiguring the power dynamics of the elite overnight. Most notoriously, he was accused of intimate relationships with his own sisters, particularly Drusilla, whom he allegedly designated as his heir. An unprecedented move that suggested he was considering an Egyptian-style royal sibling marriage, completely alien to Roman tradition. Now, we need to approach these allegations with historical caution. Many may be exaggerations or complete fabrications designed to justify his eventual assassination. But what's revealing is the specific nature of the accusations. Caligula wasn't just portrayed as someone who enjoyed various pleasures. He was specifically accused of using sex as a tool to humiliate the senatorial elite, to redraw the boundaries of power, and to elevate himself above traditional Roman constraints. Consider the claim that he turned part of his palace into a brothel, allegedly staffing it with the wives and children of senators. Whether true or not, this accusation gets at something fundamental. Caligula was perceived as someone who used bedroom access to reorganize the social and political hierarchy of Rome. By controlling access to the bodies of the elite, he was demonstrating his absolute control over the state itself. This extreme approach to bedroom politics didn't exist in a vacuum. Caligula had spent his formative years in the twisted court of Tiberius on Capri, where, according to those same hostile sources, the aging emperor had supposedly indulged in various exploitative behaviors. The young Caligula, observing how Tiberius used intimate settings to manipulate and control the power players of Rome, may have learned that the bedroom could be a more effective tool of dominance than the Senate floor. What's particularly fascinating is how Caligula's alleged bedroom behavior connected to his broader political program. This was an emperor who dressed as gods and goddesses, who allegedly planned to make his horse a consul, who demanded divine honors while still living. His reported bedroom excesses weren't separate from these actions. They were part of the same rejection of traditional Roman boundaries and hierarchies. The Roman elite could tolerate many things from their emperors, but this direct assault on their status and family honor crossed a line. When the Praetorian Guard assassinated Caligula in 41 CE, they weren't just eliminating a tyrant. They were reasserting the boundaries that his bedroom politics had deliberately violated. His successor, Claudius, understanding this perfectly, would immediately return to a more Augustan model, emphasizing family values despite his own complicated marital history. What Caligula's brief reign reveals is that Roman bedroom politics had boundaries, even in a society with sexual norms very different from our own. An emperor could have considerable freedom in his personal life as long as he maintained certain fictions, primarily that he respected the honor of elite Roman families and upheld traditional gender roles. By allegedly crossing these lines, Caligula transformed the imperial bedroom from a space of privileged privacy into a theater of terrifying public power. The lesson wasn't lost on later emperors, most of whom would find subtler ways to use bedroom politics to their advantage. But Caligula's approach, at least as recorded by hostile sources, stands as an extreme example of how the politics of pleasure could become the politics of fear when wielded without restraint by the most powerful man in the world. Hey everyone, today we're tackling a question most people won't touch: how imperial women navigated and sometimes dominated the bedroom politics of Rome. Because for every Caesar or Augustus using intimate connections to build power, there were women like Livia, Messalina, and Agrippina, who proved equally adept at this dangerous game. This section discusses historical allegations about private life in antiquity, no graphic detail. Focus on political implications and source bias. Let's start with Livia Drusilla, wife of Augustus, and perhaps the most successful female politician in Roman history, though she never held formal office. Livia understood that while the bedroom might limit women's options in some ways, it also provided unique access to power. As Augustus's wife for over 50 years, she created an unprecedented role for herself, one that combined traditional Roman matronly virtues with behind-the-scenes political influence. Ancient sources, often hostile and written decades later, allege that Livia secured her son Tiberius's succession by systematically eliminating other potential heirs to Augustus. Marcellus, Gaius Caesar, Lucius Caesar, and finally Agrippa Posthumus all died conveniently young, clearing Tiberius's path to power. While modern historians doubt Livia was actually poisoning imperial heirs, what's revealing is how plausible Romans found these allegations. They recognized that imperial women could wield enormous influence through their intimate access to the emperor. Livia's power didn't just come from being Augustus's wife. It came from her mastery of the complex social networks that ran through the imperial household. She controlled access to the emperor, managed his private correspondence, advised on appointments, and built her own client network that paralleled Augustus's formal patronage system. The bedroom gave her a base from which to expand her influence throughout the palace and beyond. But if Livia represented a subtle, socially acceptable version of female power through bedroom politics, Valeria Messalina, third wife of Emperor Claudius, represents the cautionary tale of what happened when women pushed too far against Roman gender norms. According to Tacitus and Suetonius, Messalina used her sexual appeal to create a network of indebted senators and equities, building a power base independent of her husband. Most notoriously, she allegedly challenged a famous prostitute to a contest to see who could entertain more men in one night, a story that, true or not, perfectly encapsulates Roman fears about female sexual agency. Messalina's final misstep was reportedly marrying her lover Gaius Silius in a mock ceremony while Claudius was away from Rome, a move that may have been the prelude to a coup attempt. When Claudius's freedmen discovered the plot, they executed Messalina without even consulting the emperor, understanding that her actions had breached the unwritten rules of imperial bedroom politics. The contrast between Livia and Messalina reveals something crucial about how gender shaped Roman power dynamics. A woman could exercise considerable influence through the bedroom as long as she maintained the fiction of proper female behavior. Livia, who was portrayed as a traditional Roman matron despite her political maneuvering, survived and thrived. Messalina, who allegedly flaunted her sexual agency, died young. Perhaps the most skilled female practitioner of bedroom politics was Agrippina the Younger, sister of Caligula, wife of Claudius, and mother of Nero. Agrippina understood that in Rome, women's power often depended on their relationship to powerful men. After surviving Caligula's reign and a period of exile, she cultivated a relationship with her uncle Claudius after Messalina's execution. Despite laws against uncle-niece marriages, Agrippina convinced the Senate to make an exception, became empress, and promptly had Claudius adopt her son Nero as his heir, displacing his biological son Britannicus. When Claudius died shortly after, supposedly from poisoned mushrooms, though modern historians favor natural causes, Agrippina initially ruled through her teenage son Nero. She appeared on coins alongside him, received foreign ambassadors, and even attempted to sit beside him during official meetings. For a brief moment, Rome came close to having a co-emperor system that included a woman, but Agrippina had pushed too far against Roman gender norms. As Nero matured, he grew increasingly resentful of his mother's control. Their power struggle culminated in Agrippina's assassination in 59 CE, allegedly on Nero's orders. The woman who had mastered bedroom politics ultimately couldn't overcome the fundamental Roman belief that women should influence, but never overtly exercise, political power. What these imperial women's stories reveal is that the bedroom was both an opportunity and a constraint for ambitious Roman women. It provided access to power unavailable through traditional political channels, but that power remained contingent on male approval and maintaining at least the appearance of traditional gender roles. The most successful imperial women, like Livia, understood that bedroom influence had to be exercised discreetly, with public deference to male authority and Roman traditions. Those who openly leveraged their sexuality or too blatantly sought power in their own right, like Messalina and eventually Agrippina, met violent ends. The bedroom could make a Roman woman powerful, but it could never make her a man's equal in the eyes of Roman society. Hey guys, everything you think you know about this story? Keep it, then watch it fall apart. We've explored how emperors and imperial women used bedroom politics to build and exercise power. Now let's dive into how regular Romans experienced and navigated these intimate power structures. Because the bedroom wasn't just a political space for the elite. Ordinary Romans lived under a sexual double standard that would make your head spin. A married Roman man could legally have sex with slaves of either gender, female prostitutes, and male prostitutes, as long as he took the active role, all without being considered an adulterer. His wife, meanwhile, could face exile and loss of property for a single extramarital affair. This asymmetry wasn't just about pleasure, it was about power, property, and ensuring legitimate heirs. For the average Roman household, the bedroom, cubiculum, served multiple functions beyond sleeping and sex. It was where valuable items were stored, where important private conversations happened, where sickness was treated, and sometimes where family members died. Unlike modern bedrooms, the Roman cubiculum wasn't necessarily private. Household slaves regularly entered these spaces, and visitors might be received there if they were close associates. This semi-public nature of the Roman bedroom created complex power dynamics within households. Slaves who attended their masters in these intimate settings, particularly personal body slaves, cubiculari, often wielded significant influence through their access to private information and moments of vulnerability. These servants could make or break reputations by what they chose to reveal or conceal about their masters' private lives. Consider the case of Antonia's slave, Canis, who became secretary to one of Rome's most influential women. Canis gained such detailed knowledge of political secrets that after she was freed, she became the longtime partner of the future Emperor Vespasian, helping him navigate court politics. Her bedroom access to an elite household translated directly into political capital that she could leverage for decades. For ordinary Romans, bedroom politics extended beyond their own homes and into their relationships with patrons. The patron-client system that structured Roman society had intimate dimensions that often go undiscussed. Clients were expected to attend their patron's morning salutatio, sometimes being admitted to the bedroom where the great man was still preparing for his day. This intimate access created hierarchies among clients. Those allowed into the cubiculum had higher status than those who waited in the atrium. Some ambitious Romans leveraged bedroom access for social climbing. Pliny the Younger mentions cases where men encouraged their wives to form relationships with powerful officials to secure advantages. While presented as scandalous in Pliny's letters, such arrangements reveal how Romans pragmatically navigated a system where power and intimacy were inseparable. We shouldn't imagine, however, that Romans were uniquely transactional about bedroom matters. They simply acknowledged more openly what many societies disguise, that intimate access often translates to social, economic, and political opportunity. What made Rome distinct was its complex, formalized system for managing these connections. Artifacts tell us much about how ordinary Romans conceptualized these bedroom power dynamics. Wall paintings from Pompeii and Herculaneum show intimate scenes that modern viewers might find surprising in their semi-public display. These images weren't necessarily pornographic by Roman standards. They represented ideals of virility, fertility, and household prosperity that were seen as appropriate decorations for certain spaces within the home. Archaeological evidence from provincial towns shows that even non-elite Romans emulated the bedroom architectures of the wealthy on a smaller scale. Having a defined cubiculum, even in a modest home, signaled social aspirations and an understanding of how proper Romans organized domestic space. The bedroom wasn't just where you slept, it was how you positioned yourself within Roman social hierarchies. Legal documents from Roman Egypt reveal ordinary people navigating marriage, divorce, and inheritance, all dimensions of bedroom politics that affected everyday lives. Marriage contracts specified property arrangements, expectations of children, and sometimes even sexual obligations. Wills detailed who would inherit household goods, showing how the economic consequences of bedroom arrangements extended beyond death. What emerges from these sources is a picture of ordinary Romans who were neither as libertine as modern stereotypes suggest, nor as prudish as later Christian writers would claim. They were practical people navigating a social system where bedroom access, sexual behavior, and gender performance were inseparable from economic opportunity and social standing. Unlike today, where we often pretend that professional advancement is based solely on merit, Romans acknowledged that who you knew, who you married, who you slept with, and how you performed your gender role all factored into your social and economic prospects. The bedroom wasn't a private retreat from public life. It was where crucial aspects of public identity were formed and displayed. For ordinary Romans, mastering these unwritten rules of bedroom politics wasn't just about scandal or pleasure. It was about survival and advancement in a highly stratified society. Understanding this helps us see beyond the salacious tales of imperial excess to recognize how the politics of intimacy shaped daily life throughout the Roman world. What's up, everyone? If you want the unfiltered cut of history, you're in the right place. Now, let's unravel how the Roman bedroom became a battleground not just for political power, but for religious and cultural identity, as Christianity began to transform the empire. This section discusses historical allegations about private life in antiquity. No graphic detail. Focus on political implications and source bias. By the 3rd and 4th centuries CE, the Roman Empire was changing dramatically. Economic pressures, military challenges, and new religious movements were reshaping society. Nowhere were these changes more evident than in attitudes toward the bedroom. As Christianity gained influence, the relatively pragmatic Roman approach to sexuality began giving way to something very different. Early Christian writers like Tertullian, Jerome, and Augustine didn't just critique specific sexual behaviors, they fundamentally reimagined the purpose of sexuality itself. Where Romans had seen sex as a natural activity that needed regulation primarily for social and political reasons, these Christian thinkers framed it as inherently problematic, ideally practiced only for reproduction within marriage. Sexual desire itself became suspicious, associated with humanity's fallen nature. This theological shift had profound implications for bedroom politics. The Christian ideal of celibacy, completely foreign to traditional Roman values, began gaining prestige. Men and women who rejected sexuality entirely could claim a new kind of spiritual power and authority. This dramatically reconfigured power dynamics, especially for women, who could now achieve status through rejecting rather than navigating traditional bedroom politics. Consider the case of wealthy Roman women who converted to Christianity in the 4th century. Women like Marcella, Paula, and Eustochium transformed their palatial homes into religious communities, redirecting their inherited wealth toward Christian causes rather than dynastic marriage alliances. Their bedrooms, once sites of reproductive and political obligation, became spaces of prayer and ascetic discipline. This wasn't just a religious choice. It was a radical rejection of the bedroom politics that had defined elite Roman womanhood for centuries. As Christianity gained imperial support under Constantine and his successors, these new attitudes toward the bedroom gradually gained legal force. Constantius II criminalized same-sex marriage in 342 CE. Adultery laws, which had fallen into disuse after Augustus, were revived with new religious justifications. Brothels and prostitution, long accepted features of Roman cities, faced increasing legal restrictions. But we'd be mistaken to see this as a simple story of Christian prudery replacing Roman licentiousness. The reality was messier and more interesting. Even as official sexual ethics tightened, many Romans, Christian and non-Christian alike, continued practicing older forms of bedroom politics. Imperial courts remained sites of sexual intrigue and power brokering well into the Byzantine period. Provincial elites still arranged marriages for political advantage. Powerful men still maintained multiple sexual relationships. What changed was not so much behavior as its conceptual framing. Activities that Romans had once understood primarily in terms of status, power, and social hierarchy were increasingly interpreted through religious concepts of sin, purity, and divine law. The bedroom remained political, but the terms of that politics had shifted. This transformation is perfectly captured in the story of Emperor Justinian and his wife Theodora in the 6th century CE. According to the historian Procopius in his Secret History, a notoriously hostile source, Theodora had worked in the theater and in prostitution before catching Justinian's eye. Their marriage required changing Roman law, which had forbidden senators from marrying actresses. Once empress, this former outsider to elite bedroom politics became its master, allegedly using her knowledge of sexual dynamics to dominate the court and influence imperial policy. Yet this same Theodora, alongside Justinian, promoted some of the most sexually restrictive legislation in Roman history. They closed brothels, increased penalties for sexual crimes, and promoted Christian sexual ethics throughout the empire. The woman who had navigated the old system of bedroom politics now helped redesign it according to new Christian principles. What's fascinating here is the continuity beneath the change. Whether in pagan or Christian Rome, the bedroom remained a site where power was negotiated, where access created opportunity, and where intimate behavior had public consequences. The justifications and penalties changed, but the fundamental connection between bedroom and politics endured. By the time of Justinian and Theodora, the Western Roman Empire had already fallen to various Germanic kingdoms, each bringing their own bedroom politics to former Roman territories. In the Eastern Empire, centered on Constantinople, Roman traditions blended with Christian theology and Greek cultural influences to create Byzantine court culture, where eunuchs controlled access to imperial bedchambers and empresses could wield tremendous power through strategic marriage alliances. The legacy of Roman bedroom politics thus continued long after the empire itself had transformed beyond recognition. Its echoes would shape medieval European court culture, Byzantine imperial tradition, and even the Renaissance papal courts, where Roman models of patronage and intimacy experienced a complex revival. The Roman cubiculum may have disappeared, but the power dynamics it had housed continued to influence how Western societies negotiated the relationship between intimacy and authority for centuries to come. Hey everyone! Today we're wrapping up our exploration of Roman bedroom politics by asking, what can this ancient system tell us about the relationship between power and intimacy across history? Because while the specific rules have changed dramatically, the connection between bedroom access and political influence has proven remarkably durable. The Roman approach to bedroom politics was distinctive in several key ways. First, Romans were unusually explicit about the political dimensions of intimate life. Unlike many societies that pretend private and public spheres are separate, Romans acknowledged their interconnection. Marriage alliances between elite families weren't disguised as love matches. They were openly discussed as political arrangements. Sexual behaviors weren't just personal choices. They were performances of social status. This transparency about the political nature of intimacy is actually refreshing compared to our own often hypocritical separation of public and private. Second, Romans created elaborate social and legal structures to regulate bedroom politics. Augustus's marriage legislation, the patron-client relationships that extended into intimate spaces, the complex rules about who could sleep with whom without losing status. These weren't just cultural norms, but formalized systems. The Romans essentially institutionalized what many societies leave as unwritten rules, creating a bedroom political system as structured as their legal system. Third, and perhaps most alien to modern sensibilities, Romans judged sexual behavior primarily through the lens of status rather than consent or individual preference. What mattered wasn't whether all parties wanted to participate, but whether the activity maintained proper social hierarchies. A freeborn Roman man could have sex with his slaves because this reinforced his dominance. He couldn't be the passive partner with a social inferior because this inverted the proper order. This status-based system protected the privileges of elite male citizens while leaving others vulnerable to exploitation. As Christianity transformed the empire, this status-based system gradually gave way to a sin-based system, where sexual activities were judged by religious standards that, at least in theory, applied to everyone regardless of social rank. This represented both progress and regression. More universal standards offered potential protection to the vulnerable, but religious prohibitions created new forms of control and exclusion. What's most striking when we look back at Roman bedroom politics is how it exposes dynamics that exist in all societies but often go unacknowledged. Every culture has systems that determine 1. Who has access to powerful people in intimate settings, 2. How sexual and romantic relationships affect social standing, 3. Which intimate behaviors are acceptable for which social groups, 4. How reproduction and inheritance connect to political continuity. These systems exist whether we acknowledge them or not. The Romans simply built theirs with unusual openness about power's role in intimate life. Looking at contemporary politics through this Roman lens, we might recognize familiar patterns: political marriages that create dynasties, sex scandals that reveal unwritten rules about acceptable behavior, intimate access that translates into lobbying power, and social events where proximity to powerful figures creates opportunity. The terms have changed, but the fundamental connection between intimacy and influence remains. What the Roman example ultimately teaches us is that bedroom politics isn't a scandalous sideshow to real politics. It's an integral part of how power operates in human societies. By controlling access to their most intimate spaces, Romans from emperors to ordinary householders managed their social networks, displayed their status, secured their lineages, and navigated complex power dynamics. The bedroom wasn't just where people slept. It was where crucial aspects of Roman political and social life were negotiated and performed. So what's the takeaway from our journey through the forbidden bedrooms of ancient Rome? Perhaps it's this. Societies may differ dramatically in how they organize intimate life, but the connection between intimacy and power appears to be a human universal. The Romans simply acknowledged and institutionalized what many cultures prefer to disguise: that who has access to our most private spaces often determines who has access to our social, economic, and political resources as well. By understanding how Romans navigated these dynamics, we gain perspective on our own often unacknowledged systems of bedroom politics. We might even question whether our supposed separation of intimate and political life is as clear as we pretend. After all, as the Romans would readily understand, power relations don't stop at the bedroom door. Sometimes that's precisely where they begin. And with that insight from across 2 millennia, we conclude our exploration of Rome's forbidden bedrooms, where pleasure wasn't just personal, but political, and where access to intimate spaces could create or destroy empires. Thanks for joining me on this journey through one of history's most fascinating and revealing power systems.